Welcome to episode 9 of the Kindness Objective podcast. For those who don't know me, I'm Melissa Marquais, and I'm the founder of TKO. And we're a nonprofit that is focusing on combating cruelty and bullying in our workplaces, our schools, and our communities. And joining me today is Joseph Galeas. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Very excited to be here on your show today.
Thank you. I actually took a note here that I wanted to read out loud because I wanted to kind of just tell the viewers why I was so interested in speaking with you today. And it was something that you have on your LinkedIn page that drew my attention to you. And basically, as the COO of Nutritional Coaching Institute, you wrote, "I prefer a hands-on approach to leadership. A team buy-in culture is extremely important to me, and you do not arrive at the destination by standing on the sidelines. I believe in people empowerment, and I'm always on the hunt to create opportunities that allow for a team stake in the decision-making process." And then you further went on to say mentorships and development workshops are opportunities that you take great joy in organizing, and that you found in your experience the path to building high-performance teams is through patience, one-on-one coaching, and continuous improvement, which is only achieved when leadership fosters a culture of collaboration and transparency, which I loved.
I believe in those words wholeheartedly. Thank you. Thank you for highlighting those points. I appreciate that.
Of course. Yeah. It's such a difficult thing to find great leaders. And I don't know why that is. But most of the time, what we see on LinkedIn is, especially lately, is people complaining about toxic leadership, poor work culture, lack of collaboration across teams, and all of that. And so you really stood out to me because of the fact that that is so important to you. And I'd love to learn more about, was it always just the way that you operated? And what has your experience been with your teams in fostering such a great culture?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So growing up, I was always a part of sports, right? And it's one of the things that I've certainly implemented in my children. Listen, when you're part of a team environment, your awareness is raised that you can't carry things out on your own. Right. I mean, there are strengths that you have to rely on, other individual strengths that you have to rely on. So I think it's always been a part of who I am, but it really came out. Honestly, I was just fortunate to have one of the best mentors in my life at the very early stages of my management career. And he had instilled in me at the onset that the best way to manage a team was by being a teammate versus a manager. The title is there, right? And you're going to have the opportunity to influence change, to delegate, to create order. However, that's not how you get things done. You get things done by being an actual teammate. And, because he instilled that in me early in my management career, it's just something that I was able to see come to fruition, both in his style and once I adopted it. And once I saw the results in operating as a teammate, and I'm talking, my very first management opportunity, I just held that on every layer of the corporate ladder that I climbed from that point forward.
That is so refreshing. You have no idea how refreshing that is to hear. And I had a manager who was very similar in that he was our teammate, 100%. Yeah. And honestly, I can tell you, this was when I was with Fleetio. Hands down, the best group of people that I've ever worked with in my life. But that team collaboration and the respect across teams, I can't tell you the difference between how successful we were at Fleetio versus organizations I've been part of that didn't foster that type of environment. You get people that are disengaged. They're not really emotionally invested. They don't really want to be there. And the difference in productivity is night and day. And so you have these managers and these leaders that think, I have to micromanage in order to make my team productive, when in fact, it's the complete opposite. Be kind and treat people with respect, and they'll want to work hard for you.
No, absolutely, 100%. And, to touch on your earlier statement, you mentioned how what you're seeing a lot on LinkedIn is that, we're seeing all these statements of toxicity amongst leaders, right? And I think where that comes from is you have people that are being put in a position to be a leader that doesn't necessarily enjoy working with people or developing people, right? They're all about getting things done. Now, you can get things done with force, right? But you can also get things done more effectively and, expeditiously when you're taking the approach of putting the people first, right? Helping them develop. I've worked for leaders where they had a zero tolerance for mistakes, zero tolerance for, a learning curve. I mean, I was on the receiving end of that at some points in my career. And it was absolutely frustrating because it was, I was like, how do you expect me to just know everything when I'm still being trained, when I'm still learning? So, And here's the thing. I had a conversation with another individual not too long ago, and we arrived at the conclusion that what makes us great leaders and empathetic leaders is because we remember the pain, right? We felt that sting, what it was like to be on an island by yourself, what it was like to work for somebody with zero tolerance, and you're constantly on edge, and you didn't dare take risk, because if you made a mistake, without taking a risk, what was that going to look like if you made a mistake with a risk, right?
Yeah.
So because I felt that sting, and because that pain ran so deep, I'm able to be sympathetic and empathetic, and allow my team to make those mistakes. Sometimes they think I'm nuts because I look for mistakes. I'll even present to them my plans and my ideas, and I'll ask them, please poke holes in this. Tell me where the gaps are. Tell me what's wrong here. And I just think that it just humanizes things, right? You're one of them. Can admit that you make mistakes and that you're actually acceptable of mistakes. Now, the same mistake over and over and over again, now that's a decision, right? Now there's something that needs to be done there. But, mistakes are part of it, man. I mean, it's part of living. I mean, we make mistakes in our own personal life as well. I haven't lived a perfect life, from the time I was born to now. So so the same rules apply in business.
Nobody's perfect. And you make mistakes, like you said, in your own personal life. You're going to make mistakes at work because we're not robots. Nobody's perfect all of the time. And if you're looking for perfection, good luck finding a team that operates like that, because I don't think that exists. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. I mean, perfection is right up there with methodical creatures like the leprechaun and the unicorn and Bigfoot. So good luck finding perfection.
Yeah, no. So in your experience where you were on the receiving end of that earlier in your career, and you, like you said, I wouldn't have dared to make a mistake and actually had a risk attached to it, because I would know that I was going to be on the other end of like an assault of some kind at work.
Right.
What was that experience like for you? Like, how did that make you feel? How long were you there, and how did you handle that?
Well, it felt lonely, right? And the only time you didn't feel lonely was when you were in a circle of other individuals that felt the same way, right? But that's a very dark environment, right? Because then the only thing you're talking about is the frustration you have with leadership, is the negativity that you experience with leadership. Nothing but negative words. It's a dark cloud. And I just, people that know me best, I'm an extremely optimistic person. I mean, I look for the silver lining in everything, right? So being in a circle where that's the only thing we can talk about, immediately I'm already putting in play my exit strategy. Like, I cannot be here. This isn't my type of environment. This isn't the type of leadership I want to work for. It's not the type of leader that I'm going to be. So yeah, I made the necessary changes I had to make. Sometimes it was a pivot, a lateral pivot. Sometimes it was a step back just to get out and then, regroup and start again. I mean, it's a change I've had to make a few times throughout my career. So once I got to a position where at the VP level, where you can actually influence change, because now you're having conversations with some heavy decision makers. You're meeting with, general managers and CEOs and CTOs, that's when I was like, okay, I'm finally here. I'm going to be the voice for the people, and that's where, that's why I appreciate being in the position that I'm in now. Yes, the authority comes with that. The clout comes with that. But what I embrace from being in this position is that I can actually influence change. Like, I can decide today, this is what I want as a culture, and that's it. Now we're going to do that. Instead of having to wait for somebody above me, because there's only a few that are above me, instead of waiting for somebody above me to instill that change.
That's very interesting. A lot of people that are in leadership roles, I find that the toxicity that comes with the culture is really based on the fact that, unlike what you just said, the things that matter to them most about being in a leadership role are the clout and the title and the authority. And whereas you're saying it's about being able to implement change, positive change. So you definitely are the exception to the rule, because most people in leadership don't operate that way. So I applaud you for that. That's tremendous. And have a culture that fosters that type of creativity in the workplace, taking risks and things like that, knowing that if it doesn't work out the way that we think it's going to, Joseph's not going to come and like write me up for it. He's going to say, all right, well, let's look at what can we do different next time, or something like that to make it better. But that's very hard to find.
100%. And it's funny that you bring that up. So throughout my entire career in management, I wrote one person up in my entire 15-year career in operations management. And it was because my manager told me I had to do it. If it wasn't for that, it never would have happened. And it was for something, I consider it petty, but the the thing about working in corporate America is that there are processes for processes for processes, and if you break one rule, you get a verbal warning. If you break it again, you get a written warning. If you break that, then you've got disciplinary action, right? I mean, and I operate in a great area. Like, this is where, and I don't mind saying this publicly, this is where I disregard some rules, right? Like, those are the things that I don't think that helps in the culture. I don't think that helps in developing, team chemistry. People are going to make mistakes. I would rather address, if they're repetitive mistakes, I would rather address those behind closed doors than to put some sort of a formal written notice in somebody's file.
Yeah. And honestly, when those things happen, right? Like, I've been in sales most of my life. And anytime that I've had an AE that I've worked with that was put on a PIP, what it does is the complete opposite of what you're trying to accomplish, where you're saying, okay, you're on a PIP, your performance needs to improve, yada, yada. But now you've created so much anxiety and stress in the person that works there because they feel like their job is on the line, that they're going to make more mistakes because they're completely stressed out. And so it actually does the complete opposite of what you're trying to accomplish.
I agree 100%. And honestly, I'm of the mindset that I don't need a piece of paper to show how serious the situation is. If I'm giving you 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days to clean up your act or to recover from this mishap or whatever, I can do that very easily with a verbal conversation. I don't need a piece of paper to convince somebody how urgent this is. So I just, it's a method that I've just never adopted.
And I would imagine, based on what you're saying, that if you did have someone that was making mistakes and maybe even the same mistake consistently, you seem to be the kind of leader that's not just going to be like, fix it, but you're going to coach them and help them learn how to fix it and make sure that they're successful.
Absolutely, 100%. And like I said, that comes with being part of the team, right? There's a model that I constantly repeat to my team, and it's participation over delegation. Now, there is delegation required in leadership, right? So, like, don't read too much into that. But the point is that it's best to be involved than to just give out the orders.
Yeah, 100%. I'm curious, with you fostering this type of work culture and teams that are healthy and positive, if you had someone on your team that was a toxic person in the group, how would you address that?
Well, I've had those instances, and like I said, I address those things right behind closed doors with those individuals. But basically, what I'm doing in that situation is I'm painting them a picture of, like, listen, here's the norm of the team, right? And you don't want to be an outlier. You don't want to be, the oddball out, and honestly, when this does happen, it's usually because this person prefers to operate in isolation, or this person is constantly just going against the grain, right? If you've got 10 people saying, let's go with option A, this is the person that's like, well, let's go with option B, like, this is where you're having the conversation where you're saying, listen, you don't want to be the person that's being singled out here, right? And it's honestly more so me then having to work with that individual as a collaborative duo. If I can't get that person to, jump into the pool with everybody else, that's fine, right? They have to operate at their own pace. But now that means that he or she and I need to operate as a collaborative pair to warm that individual up to finally getting on board with my preference of the culture, which is collaboration.
So again, you're not saying that people shouldn't speak up and share that I think maybe option B is better. You're open to the feedback, but that doesn't mean you want them to be negative when everybody as a group decides we appreciate your thoughts on option B, but as a collaborative team, we feel that option A is going to be the better option here.
Right. And again, just because you select option B over option A of everybody else, the picture that I'm painting here is when it's intentional and it's constant. Right? Like, we're talking about a toxic type of individual here, right? And when we're talking about toxicity, there's usually some sort of malice intent there, right? Or just some stubbornness there. That's what we're talking about here. Now, again, if we're talking about an individual that is completely all for collaboration and they're just holding their stance that they prefer option B, then I'm gonna be like, okay, let's hear this person out. Like, there's obviously something that the rest of us are missing. So, it's not that you have to jump on board with what everybody else is saying. It's a case by it. You have to look at the individual.
It's the intention behind what they're bringing to the table. If there's being adversarial just for the sake of being adversarial, that's, like you said, that's toxicity. Whereas if they're standing their ground on, I really want to just talk to you all about why I really think this is going to be better, you're open to that. It's the intention
100%.
behind
Yeah.
it. 100%.
It's actually intriguing because if there's 10 of us, if there's 10 of us in a room and 9 of us are saying option A and one person saying option B and they've got this passion behind them, that's intriguing. It's like, okay, well, like, what am I missing here? Like, now I'm able to learn something, right? And that's the fun part.
And that is so rare for somebody in a leadership role to even say, like, I'm able to learn something, because they always, in my experience, a lot of leadership that I've worked with, they have this mindset of, I'm right, you're wrong. I know because I'm management. You don't know because you're not management. I tell you what to do, you do it. I don't have anything to learn. I'm the smartest person in the room. And those are the people that really destroy teams and creativity and everything that makes a team great. They destroy it. They destroy it from the top down.
No, they do. And let me tell you something. Now, I've been very fortunate to work with some extremely, extremely talented and intelligent individuals. I'm talking subject matter experts in their field. Now, I'm talking intelligent, talented individuals at what they do. Now, could these, and I'm talking smarter than me, right? Smarter than me at what they do. Now, could they lead a team? Probably not. And in some of the cases, I can tell you, no, they could not lead a team, right? Like, there are great individual contributors that do not make great leaders and vice versa. Now, I recognize their talent and I recognize their intelligence, and I utilize that to my advantage, not in a malice way, but I utilize that to lift the team. Now, I would not be where I am today if I didn't have those types of individuals working side by side me. It was me that was able to identify a flaw in the system or a process and go to that expert and say, hey, here's what I found. How do we fix this? Like, what's the solution? And then they go into their laboratory of ideas and they brainstorm, and then they come back to me with something. That's that's how you become successful. Leaning on the individuals that are working in your circle, that have that knowledge, that have that intel.
It's incredibly important to recognize other people's talents on the team and not get intimidated by that. Some people in leadership roles find that the people on their team that might be in the room that are smarter than them in a certain area are intimidating. They see it as a threat to their position. And it takes a really great leader to be able to say, I recognize that you're smarter than me in this area, and let's work together to make things better, and then actually implement those things. And it empowers the people on your team, and it makes them feel valued. It makes them feel appreciated. It doesn't make them feel like you think they're below you or anything like that. So it goes a long way with morale too, to recognize other people's talents and appreciate them, as opposed to being intimidated by them.
No, absolutely. And let's not forget, we all have our own strengths and weaknesses, right? I mean, there are strengths that I have that my team is not equipped with, right? So, I just never understood, being in a leadership position and then be intimidated by your team members that might have a wealth of knowledge and intel. I mean, that is a golden nugget right there. I mean, that's an advantage, not a disadvantage. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't understand it either. Most of the people that I've worked with in leadership roles are very rigid, and they, like you said, they have their process for this and their process for that, and they're not willing to bend or be flexible, even if what they're doing is to the detriment of the success of the company or the team. So when you find someone like you in a leadership role, people are going to stay longer in that position. They're going to stay with the company longer. They're going to have more loyalty. They're going to work harder because they appreciate the culture, especially when it's so hard to find a culture like that. That's how you get your top talent to shine. That is the best way to get them to do their best work.
No, and I'll be quite honest with you. It's how I was able to get to where I am today, right? It's because of the mentor that I had early on, where it made me want to go above and beyond for him. It made me want to outshine myself, right? And so I believe that I was always born with the work ethic that I have. I mean, like I said, from my days in you, that does make you want to go above and beyond, and that carries on from position to position.
Yeah, it does. I know that there were times when I worked at Fleetio that I'd be midnight on a Sunday night at midnight doing a demo, happy to be doing a demo at midnight because they were in Australia. But I knew that the company and the team and my manager that I worked for and with appreciated the fact that I was doing it. And it was such a game changer, especially having come out of the most toxic work environment I've ever been in my life. I also had a bigger appreciation for that than I think most people normally would, because I had seen the other side of what it could be like, and I was just burned out on it. And so to have people that were amazing I was like, I'll do a demo at 1 a.m. I don't care. That's great, and I was happy to do it. So it goes a long way. Now, I'm curious, you mentioned being able to talk to other leaders and VPs and things like that to implement change. Have you ever run into a situation where you wanted to implement things to make a healthier work culture and you brought it to another person in a leadership role and got pushback?
Honestly, not since I mean, I've always had ideas, maybe at the manager, director level, project management level. But once I got into the VP roles, I mean, it was pretty much my show. I mean, I got buy-in from those above me. And I think the reason why I was able to get buy-in from those that I reported to, and even from the board, is because there's two things that I bring to the table, right? I bring data, right? So this is what we need. Here's why we need it. If we don't do X, Y is going to happen. Y is bad. If we do X, Z is going to happen. Z is good. And here's why it's good. And here's why Y is bad, right? So I bring data to the table, and I bring it in a way where I can make them understand the consequences, right? And the benefits. And number two, I do bring a level of charisma and persuasion. Right. So I'm able to explain to them, like with being extremely authentic, like, this is what I need to be successful. This is what I need in order for me to do what you hired me to do. And this is what I need in order for the team to be successful.
But no, I think that's great that you operate in that way. What would you say to someone that is in a toxic situation with leadership that doesn't listen, and maybe they're not in a position to just quit their job and have no income? Maybe they don't know what to expect, but it's tearing them down every day. What would you tell them in that position? What would you say to do?
That's tough because, I was in a position not too long ago and I just couldn't penetrate the individual. I just couldn't penetrate them for them to open up their eyes and see, the damage that they were causing. So, and it's unfortunate because if the toxicity is coming from a person in leadership, it's very unlikely that person is going to be willing to open up their eyes and see that they're the cause of the toxicity, right? It's just unfortunate. And if you're in a position where you just can't you can't quit. Obviously, I would never advise anybody to quit. But if you're not making any traction with leadership, right? If you can't get them to open up their eyes to, how they're contributing to the toxicity, you've got to start. You can't stay in that position. We see it all the time. We see it posted on LinkedIn all the time, right? Don't sacrifice, your health over wealth, right? Now, that's not to say quit your job and save your health, because, part of your health is having the funds to maintain a healthy living, right? So honestly, what I did is I just started to plan my exit strategy. Now, there was some times in situations where it only took me 2 months to plan that exit. And there were other cases where it went on for 18 months, right? Wow. It's just, it takes that, because you're not just looking for a opportunity to exit. Like that's just putting a Band-Aid on it, right? You're looking for the next opportunity, optimum opportunity, where when you leave this situation, you're going to be in a better situation, not leave a bad situation to end up in another bad situation or just a slightly better situation. So my advice would honestly be is, just start planning your exit strategy. It's what I've done. That can be daunting, right? Because there's the searching and then there's the rejection, right? I mean, but I would rather be rejected by an outsider than to be rejected by the person that's leading me.
That's a great way of looking at that. And it's very true. And if you wait and wait and wait, and it's just toxicity is going to get worse, it's not going to get better, then you're going to find yourself probably out of a job because it got so bad. And then you haven't even started looking yet. So you're already behind. And when you talk about like getting into a worse situation or a slightly better situation, that can be very difficult too, though, because like when you're dating, right? Chris Rock likes to say, you're not meeting them, you're meeting their representative. Right? And then yeah, like 6 months later, the real person comes shining on through and you're like, what the hell is that? Right? But companies do the same thing. They all, we have such a great culture here and all of that.
Off the red carpet.
So I always tell people, if you're looking for a role and you're interviewing, reach out to people that have worked there before, maybe on LinkedIn, and say, what was your experience like working there? And talk to people and make sure, like, if you're going to leave, jump ship to go to another place, do your due diligence to make sure that they're not just hyping it up and that it is actually going to be the environment that they're telling you it's going to be. Because that happens a lot. And then you go, well, how did I wind up in the same situation somewhere else?
Right. And let's not forget, right? If you're just getting into a slightly better situation than where you previously were, they don't know your history. They don't know what you were just dealing with, right? So you're already going to be coming with some baggage, right? And so if you're being met with the same type of resistance, or, if you're starting to sense the same level of toxicity, it's already affected you because you came affected, right? And so now
Yeah.
you're not shining as bright as you probably would in the best of environments, right? So that's why, if there's toxicity, address it. And if you can't penetrate that individual to make any changes, then you need to start planning your exit.
I find that most people are not able to go to leadership and say what they need or how things are impacting them and actually see some changes being made. I find most leadership that is like that because they've never been willing to take the feedback before. Because certainly this wouldn't be the first time somebody has said something about the work environment, I would
And
imagine.
that's why quiet quitting is on the rise.
Exactly.
Because instead of saying something, and they're probably right. Like, why bother saying something? Because all it's going to do is put a target on my back, because this individual is not going to be very receptive to the information. They're going to be defensive. And now all of a sudden I got a target on my back. So why do all of that? Why put myself through any of that? Why
Yeah.
not just quit silently and just, exit the premises?
Exactly. So people are like, you see that a lot. People just up and quitting, and they're done. They're sick and tired of these environments that impact their mental health, impact their happiness, and people aren't willing to do it anymore. I think a lot of things changed with COVID because a lot of people were working remotely and they were in their own environment. They didn't have toxicity around them in the office and the gossip and all of that because they were pretty much on their own, even though they were working as a team, but they worked more independently and they got to see what that feels like. And now that they know what that's like, they're not willing to go back to the old school mentality of micromanagement and you listen to me, and they're not going to do it. They're
And they
not going to
shouldn't. And they shouldn't.
And they shouldn't. So I think that's good advice, is just start planning your exit strategy. And as much as people say like, oh, tell HR, let me tell you something. In my experience, HR has never been an advocate for the employee. Ultimately, their job is to protect the company. But what's so interesting and what people don't realize, and it's such a backward way of thinking, if you really want to protect your company, build a great culture. Just do what's right to begin with, and you don't have to worry about mitigating all of the negativity that might be shared about your organization. Just do the right thing, and people are going to build you up and talk about how great the company is and how much they enjoy being part of it. If you do the right thing, there's nothing to mitigate. Just do the right thing. It's not hard.
No, it's not. And, any organization I've been a part of, like that's what I've preached, right? About the people, the culture. There has to be, recognition and reward programs. There has to be, public displays of appreciation, like anything that's going to make the employees feel valued. It doesn't take much. It's just mind boggling how much of that is missing in organizations. I have gone into organizations and, not to pat myself on the own back, but I have turned around organizations and the cultures of the organizations, not with magic, just by showing appreciation and expressing, gratitude and constantly commending them for a great job and for their contribution. That's all
It
it takes.
doesn't take much.
No, it doesn't. It's mind-boggling. Like the fact that I can walk to an organization and turn their culture around just by being a person, like that. Listen, that simplicity of work. I mean, it's just mind-boggling to me that that's all it takes. But so many organizations are missing out on that.
Yeah, and you're right. It doesn't take much at all. Like back in the day when I was selling at Fleetio, we had a Slack channel. It was like if a deal closed, it automatically populated that in the Slack channel. And everyone was like, awesome job. Like kudos to the SDR who booked the original meeting. Freddie, you're the man. Like everyone complimented everyone. Everybody supported everybody and celebrated the success together. And when we had trials that we needed to fix, things that were hiccups in the road, we worked together with the same passion to fix those. And the results were amazing. And like you said, it was so easy. It was just great job.
Well, and that's why you have to genuinely, enjoy working with people, and not just working with people, but you have to have a pride, a passion, a desire to want to develop those around you as well. Because with that desire to want to develop, you're going to be curious about, their strengths and their weaknesses, and having joy in working with people. Like there are things I know my staff on personal and professional levels. I know, that they're having babies, they're getting married, they're going on these family trips, sometimes some of the struggles they're going through at home and we're talking about them. I mean, that's just, you're forming a connection with your people. It should not be all work, work, work. I've seen leaders feel awkward in conversations when an employee is talking to them about some personal, something that's going on at home. And, they get some sort of generic response like, well, I'm sorry you're dealing with that. And then they just go on to the topic. And it's like, wait a minute, you just missed out on an opportunity to kind of dive into like how this is making them feel and how is this affecting you at work? Is there anything that I'm doing that might be contributing to the stress that you're already dealing with at home? Because I'm not somebody that overworks you, but if you feel like you're being overworked because of what you're dealing with at home, I can easily take a step back.
I don't think I've ever had a manager ever ask, am I contributing to your stress levels in any way? That's never a question that I've been asked in my 30 plus years working in sales ever.
No, and it's because I've been able to form these close connections with my employees where they're comfortable letting me know, about some of their struggles at home. And we talk about them. Sometimes I can relate to them. I can say, I'm talking to an employee that's, I'm 47 years old. And I'm talking to an employee that's 31 years old, might be going through some relationship issues. I'm like, listen, dude, I've been there. Here's probably what's going to happen. Here's probably what you said that was wrong. Here's what you can say to fix it. Just like giving brotherly, older brotherly advice, right? And because you start forming that connection, you want to make sure that they're in a better place, not just at home, but if I don't want you to also feel stressed at work as well, and I can give out orders, I can set expectations. I do have high standards. I do have high expectations. I don't force them, but I set them. Like, this is what I'm looking for. These are the results I need. So, but I do know how to scale it back. If I know that you're going through something at home, one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got as a young manager is my director pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, Joe, Ralph is painting his house this weekend. He is doing it all by himself. It's a massive undertaking." He's like, "Have you ever painted your house?" And I said, "No, I don't even own a home yet." he said, "It's a massive undertaking. He's going to do it for the entire weekend. How do I know this? Because I have a really good relationship with him. And he told me that, he's gone through the whole selection process of the colors and this and that. He got quotes, didn't like the price. He's going to do it himself." The reason why he was telling me this, he's like, he's going to come back to work on Monday after having this long weekend of painting. Ease up on him.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. I didn't feel it then. I was just like, okay, fine. But as time progressed and as I started to work, and learn, getting to know my staff more on a personal level and seeing what they were going through at home, I was like, son of a bitch, I get it. I know exactly why he was telling me this, because that is how you contribute to their well-being. That, if as long as you know what they're going through at home, and you don't have to know all the intimate details, but if you know that there is, like, we're talking about painting your house. Yes, that's a massive undertaking. And, coming off of that, he knows he has to come back to work full time, but you don't have to make work harder for him after he just had this weekend of painting. Now, we're using painting as an example, but there are other more strenuous situations that could be happening over the weekend.
Right. Somebody's family member could be in the hospital. Somebody could have passed
Exactly.
away. Their car could be falling apart and they don't have $1,000 that they need to replace the transmission or whatever. And they're just, nobody's 100% every day, because we all have life outside of work. There are always things that come up, period. That's just life. But you have to recognize that people are people before they're just an employee. They're also people, and everybody has
100%.
struggles.
And you're not going to know those details if you're not forming a bond with your employees. Because they're not just going to come to you and say, "Oh, by the way, my mother's in the hospital." Like, they're just not going to feel that comfortable.
Yeah, that's very true. When I first started in a sales role a while ago now, but the manager that I worked for, I was brand new and I fell off a ladder because I'm great like that. And I tore my ACL completely. And I was thinking, and I hadn't been there very long. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? Like, I haven't been here long enough to even tell them I need to be out because I might need surgery. And I was very nervous to talk to my manager about it. He was so nice. And he was like, "Oh, I've been there and done that twice." He's like, "Let me give you some tips. Ice it, do this, elevate." He was great. He's like, "If you need to take off because you're having surgery, you're going to take off because you're having surgery. You're going to be okay. It's a long recovery. It's going to suck. I'm not going to lie, but it's all good at work." He was so nice. Right. And it just took the weight of the world off my shoulders, knowing that, like, I don't have to be perfect at work. I don't have to always have my life in perfect order. And that's okay. People are going to have days that aren't okay. And they understand that and they support you, it makes a tremendous difference.
It does. That's amazing. And those are the types of stories that I love. And those are the types of stories that I strive to be a part of, not for the credit or for the stories, but like I think that's what leadership's all about.
Yeah.
Making your team, it's making your team feel comfortable with coming to you with their struggles and their challenges, not just on a professional level, but even on a personal level, because that will contribute to their work performance. People say all the time, don't bring home to work. That's impossible. That is impossible.
It is not possible. It's not.
No.
It's not possible. We don't have a switch we can just flip and forget that life is happening. Life is happening, and we're feeling things, and we're going through things, and certain things are hard, and that's just part of life, And I'll tell you, like, if you're able to support your employees when they need you like that, on the days that they are at their best, they're going to be even more at their best, because they're going to remember that you were there for them in a time that was really difficult. I was talking to somebody the other day about bereavement policies at work. And this guy said his aunt had passed away, and he had to go back to work 2 days later, and he was expected to just be normal. And this was more of like a mother to him than an aunt. But because, was it your direct parent?
Yeah, there are some policies that I just ignore. Like, that's just, come on. Like, just because on paper it isn't like, that's not your mother, but that's how they feel about this individual. That's what matters. So let's treat it as such.
And 2 days back, they were expected to be fully productive. And in contrast, there was someone else I spoke to on LinkedIn who was saying that I think it was her husband that passed away very young, unexpectedly. And she had young children, and she was just distraught, as any of us would be. And for 6 months, they lowered her workload, and they built her back up, and they changed her performance expectations. They supported her. And she stayed with that company for over 10 years. And that was part of the reason why.
Of course she did. Of course.
You're never going to get 100% out of people every day. But what you'll never do by treating them poorly is ever get 100% out of them any day, because they're not going to care about being there, and they don't care about you. So if you have to give somebody a couple of days where I know you're at 50% today, you're going to get the best of them on the other days. It's going to balance itself out.
It really is. I mean, listen, we all talk about give it your best. Sometimes 40% is your best. I mean, like I said, there is life happening outside those work walls.
Yeah. I'm so grateful to have met you and to have this conversation with somebody in a leadership role who actually understands the importance of being kind at work. Because with TKO, we originally started to focus on the kid aspect of TKO. And I had started TKO after a friend's daughter, she had committed suicide after she was being bullied really, really bad at school. And so I started TKO, and the original mission was like instilling empathy and kindness and things like that in young kids to combat bullying, as opposed to just putting some cute little, no bullying with a line through it on a shirt, which does nothing, So it was intentional. And then I started to experience more and more toxicity myself in the workplace. And I realized, like, you know what? This isn't just a kid issue. This is a societal issue. And it happens at work, and it happens in children's sports. You said you were in sports when you were younger. I've seen some of the worst coaches that have made my son go from loving baseball and literally just out there every day practicing to not wanting to play at all. And then I've seen the great coach that he had after that, Coach Steve, we love you. I've seen him he was amazing. And now my son is all in again. But it just takes one person.
You know what? And it's those are the individuals that haven't been able to connect the dots with, if you can make somebody feel good about themselves, the results are going to show, the results that you want. Right. Now let's talk about, sports, right? If you want, you want to win the game, well, yelling at the kids and, demoralizing them and kind of force feeding them what they need to be doing or what they should be doing, that's not going to get the job done. But if you encourage them, make them feel good about themselves, or let them know, like, hey, listen, you struck out, whatever. You might strike out again. You know what? Whatever. You might strike out a third time. And at some point, you're not going to strike out. So let's just keep going at it. You're going to take the pressure off them. Next thing you know, you're going to start seeing results. Right? Same thing in business. Same thing in the work environment. The
pressure that is put on people can cripple you. It can literally cripple you. And I've told this before on a different podcast that we did, but when I was with Fleetio, I was only a few months into my role there, and we had our quota for the month. Everybody had quota. And the CEO, the guy who founded Fleetio, Tony Somerville, best guy ever. He called an impromptu meeting, a virtual meeting. So your first thought is, great, what's coming now, right? And it was for the sales team. So we were just like all on edge. And then we got on this meeting and he basically said, when we, as a leadership team, we got together and we put these quotas in place and we thought that they were reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But we have since realized that we were wrong. And we don't want people to be stressed out at work or worried about their jobs. So we're going to lower quota. Now let's get out there and crush it. And that's exactly what we did. We surpassed the original quota because we didn't have stress and we didn't have
that stress and unrealistic expectations.
Yeah. Right. And the pressure was really, you know, when you're especially in sales, the pressure of I have a number to hit makes you start acting desperate sometimes in sales to get deals in. And that's how you lose deals. Right.
I would have loved to have been in that room because you know, just based on my experience, right? There's always the one individual that just says, no, this isn't right. This isn't how this isn't how we're going to sell it to our team. God, I would have loved to have been in that room because I would have been like, yeah, tell him, man, tell him.
I would love to be in that room again just to relive that moment because it was one of the highlights of my entire 30-year career in sales was that moment. And that was the moment I realized I have found myself in a very special place with some very special people.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. So it's great. But I appreciate your insights. And I think that as people come up under you, and I'm sure that if people are working toward management roles, I have no doubt that you are helping to train them and get them prepared for that with empathy and understanding. So you're going to bring up other leaders under you that are going to be like you. And that's what we need. We need that. We need more leaders like you.
That's the expectation. You know, one of my greatest mentors, you know, told me in a conversation once, you know, to go out there and make more Joes. So that's what I'm doing.
Make more Joes. I love it. That might be the title of this podcast, Making More Joes.
Make more Joes. I love it.
We're not talking about coffee.
There you go.
Right. But no, thank you so much for your time. And
It's my pleasure.
We'll definitely be keeping up with you. And I'm excited to watch your company continue to grow under your amazing leadership. So awesome on everything that you're doing. And I really appreciate you sharing your story and your experiences.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for the kind words. I'm really glad that we connected. And I appreciate the invite and the opportunity to speak on your podcast. Thank you so much for that.
My pleasure. So for the rest of you who are watching, stay kind, stay empathetic, be compassionate. Don't forget that people are people first. Yes, they are employees. Yes, they have a role to fill, but they're people first. Get to know them, be there for them, support them, and you will definitely see your team be more successful.